Preliminary findings already telling us her death was a homicide. Now we know how. Manual strangulation. Just a few moments ago, Coroner Dr. Brent Blue spoke with my colleague Anderson Cooper, who asked him to clarify the description of throttling in that report.
Throttling means that that someone was strangled by human force. There was no mechanical force involved. People can be strangled by other means, like we have seen people on snowmobiles who run into a wire. That would be strangling by a mechanical event. But this was, we believe this is strangling by a human being.
How do you determine that it's a human being?
Well, mainly because only humans have opposable thumbs, but there is no evidence that this was done by any kind of animal as far as the cause of death.
No, I mean, you can tell somebody used their hands as opposed to used some other object.
You can't necessarily tell that. But when we talk about manual strangling, it's as opposed to something that is mechanical that has caused it.
The Petito family's attorney says this, quote, "Gabby's family is not making any statements until they bring Gabby home." John Walsh, host of In Pursuit with John Walsh, believes that the coroner's testimony will be the star of this case if and when it goes to trial.
You will probably be the most important witness at the trial. And I asked you before how confident you feel that Brian Laundrie, and they use the semantics, he was a person of interest. I'm old school. He was the only suspect ever. I just wonder, do you have any doubts it's Brian Laundrie?
I can't make any comment about any suspects because we are not involved in that part of the investigation. We are only involved in the investigation of the body of the deceased. So who committed the homicide is really to be determined by law enforcement.
So that was John Walsh. Joey's back with me. Is he right? Will the coroner be the star of the trial? And if so, why? Is it the description of the cause of death to the jurors?
Yeah, Susan, there's no question in my mind that he will be the star witness in this case. Why? Because you look to the issue of cause of death. And when you look to the issue of cause of death, you're going to have to make an assessment if you're the jury, and you're going to present the information to the jury as to what was that. And what was that was strangulation. You heard my good friend Joseph Scott Morgan indicate that this is personal. You heard Casey Jordan talk about the intimacy involved in this. Why is that relevant? Because who else would do that? When you have a circumstantial case wherein you don't have surveillance, Susan, pointing to who a perpetrator, suspect, defendant might be. You don't have 5 witnesses in the Tetons and mountains who would show, otherwise demonstrating he did it. So what do you rely upon? You rely upon, ladies and gentlemen, your good sense, your judgment. Would it be someone who knew her? Would it be someone who had some issues, some passion, and wanted her dead? Would it be an individual who was traveling with her? And would that be Mr. Laundrie? And so there's no question as it relates to his testimony that establishes the strangulation, the personal nature of it. And so, yes, indeed, in the event that Brian Laundrie is brought to justice and brought before a jury, his testimony, Susan, would be pivotal.
In your experience, Joey, have you seen that? Have you seen the jurors in various cases really pay attention to the cause of death and listen to the autopsy and what happened to that person?
Susan, it's everything, right? And as it relates to these trials, remember on the other end of it, there's a victim. And so for families, it's just such a terrible, grueling, miserable day. And oftentimes families leave the courtroom. They don't want to hear about their loved one, their precious, beautiful daughter, son, uncle, whoever it may be, and talking about the specifics with regard to how they died. In this case, how they were strangled. In this case, how it was not mechanical. In this case, how they would know that the thumbs did it. And you get into all the other aspects, posterior and anterior, all the things Joseph Scott Morgan was breaking down earlier. And so, yes, indeed, I think that everyone's riveted to that issue. And in terms of cause of death, particularly in a case like this where it's circumstantial and you're looking to find out who killed her and why. The autopsy answers the question. His testimony, that is the coroner's, will answer that question.